It's Q&A time, stay tuned. Hey guys, welcome back to the tennis vlog. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so already. This Q&A was going to happen because we had just hit 1,000 subscribers, but I've taken so long to actually do it that we've now almost hit 1,600, so I am behind schedule. But now the season's over, I have collected all your questions. There are quite a few of them. And a year on from the last non-tournament related Q&A, we are doing another one. So I glanced through them briefly, so I have a bit of an idea of what's in here, but I haven't thought through my answers in depth. The first two are quite similar, so I've grouped them together. The first question, which isn't quite a question, it's more a statement. Show some videos with you playing tennis. And then the one that's quite similar is, are you a tennis player yourself? If so, what's your level and tennis history like? Well, oh dear. Yes, I do play tennis. I have played tennis from the age of 15, so how long ago is that now? Over 6 years ago I started. I was taught the basics, and from there I would say I have learned and developed largely just through watching the pros and trying to implement that into my game. So I haven't had a coach now for a number of years, and I never had a one-on-one coach. I would just go to junior sessions. What's my level like? Not as great as it has been. Hopefully not dreadful, although my serve should be a lot better for my height. The only footage I have of me playing tennis is from a couple of months ago, which was at the end of I think a couple of hours of playing, so it's not my best. And I didn't plan on putting it online, I had that for my own personal use. So I like to think that I can hit and move and play a lot better than this, but this is what I have. I don't like watching myself back because I watch for 5 seconds and I see 55 things that I'm doing wrong or that I would want to improve. But even if you have a coach, I think it's a good idea to film yourself and watch yourself playing. I used to play tennis probably on average 7 to 8 hours a week a few years ago. At the moment, for a variety of factors, I'm probably fortunate if I play once a month. I have seen better days in my tennis playing, and I hope to play more come New Year. Next question, what tennis YouTubers do you watch, if any? I don't watch any tennis YouTubers. Given that I do a YouTube channel myself, I'd rather that it's just me and my own input, and I don't want it to be influenced by anything else that I've seen. Next two questions were quite similar. What are your predictions for men's and women's 2019 Grand Slam champions at all 4 Grand Slam tournaments? Great. Why would you do this to me? I know I do preview and predictions videos, but I mainly do it with the focus on the analysis, and because I know you guys like that kind of video. I hate predicting. Start with the men's, because that's probably a bit easier. These predictions are not set in stone. I am very much likely to change them throughout the course of the season, because I think it's very dependent upon a player's form going into the event and in the weeks leading up to it. Australian Open at the present moment, I'd have to say Novak Djokovic. Obviously a great end to this season, and he has been quite dominant at that event in the past. So French Open, Rafael Nadal, he had a fantastic 2018 season outside of injuries, and I expect him to continue his clay court form. Wimbledon, Djokovic or Roger Federer. I think it very much depends where Federer's mental state is at that point in time. And the US Open is always the weird one, because I think it's the one at the end of the season with players getting tired where it's more of an opportunity for guys that maybe haven't shone so much earlier in the year. Honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if someone like Andy Murray or Stan Wawrinka regrouped and shook off their injuries to come back and win that one. But then there are players like Kevin Anderson, who's been deeply impressive in sustaining and building up his form over the past year or so. Marin Cilic, who's won there before and has done exceedingly well to make more Grand Slam finals. Juan Martín del Potro, who was a finalist there last year. There are so many players that would have a shot at that particular slam above all others, I believe. But there's a part of me that could see Djokovic winning all 4 Grand Slams because he is coming back to form and he thrives at the major events. WTA, well, it could be anyone, couldn't it? It's still so difficult to predict the women's tour. The woman I think that could probably surprise people is Garbine Muguruza. By her standards, I think she's had a really poor 2018 season, and I can definitely see her bouncing back this year. We saw Angelique Kerber have a subpar season after winning her first 2 Grand Slams, then she came back to win Wimbledon, so I think I could see something of the same from Muguruza coming back to win a slam. And there are literally a ton of players that could do it, so I can't list them all. This next question is formed of many questions, so let's take them one at a time. Zverev won the ATP Finals by beating Roger Federer and Novak Djokovic back-to-back. How do you think this win will affect men's tennis in 2019? Do you believe it will remain a dominant year for Djokovic where he wins multiple slams? Do you think this loss for Djokovic will impact his performance for next year? I will answer that section first. I don't think that loss in particular is going to have an impact on Djokovic. Obviously, it was the end of the year. He had had a surprise period of domination given the way he started the year, and he lost to Karen Khachanov in a Masters 1000 final prior to this as well. No, I don't think that loss in particular will impact Djokovic. Maybe the losses at the end of the year indicate that he won't quite attain the ridiculous standards of domination that he had in, say, 2015. As I previously said, I can definitely see Djokovic winning multiple slams. It's unusual for Djokovic to experience tiredness having dominated only for a handful of months. So maybe that win indicates that Djokovic isn't going to have an absolute stranglehold on the tour, but I don't think it's going to affect him in big moments, so to speak. I don't think it's going to give him a lot of self-doubt. Do you think one of the next gen players will have the capacity to win a slam? In 2019, honestly, I don't think so. I think a lot of the next gen players have made strides in 2018, really stepped up. Zverev obviously keeps leading them. Karen Khachanov, massive step up for him, winning that Masters 1000 title. Borna Coric continuing to prove himself. Other players just below, Alex de Minaur making massive strides to finish at a career high ranking. But there's a big factor that I think still separates these players from a Grand Slam title, and that is the best of 5 sets format. It's one thing to be able to play well over a few matches that are best of 3 and pull off a couple of wins over top players, but do these younger guys have the stamina to compete for 7 matches over best of 5 sets? I don't think that they can yet match the likes of Federer, Djokovic and Nadal in that area. If any player is going to make a breakthrough, I would say that it's Zverev, and I still feel that he has a little bit of a way to go before that, given that he hasn't been beyond a major quarterfinal yet. Do you think Nadal or Federer will return? Well, I don't think either of them really need to return because I don't think they've massively dropped off. Federer obviously has taken more steps back because he has seemed to lose a lot of his consistency, has seemed to need more rest. Nadal, I think, had a brilliant season in terms of the level of his tennis. I don't think you can point to a single area of the year where his level substantially dropped. Even on grass courts, he was experiencing success. Injury was the big thing for Nadal, and if he's not injured next year, I expect him to at least win the French Open and do damage on the clay, and I can definitely see him making an impact elsewhere. With Federer, I do believe, as I've said before, it's all about the head game. If he can get his mentality and his head game in the right place, then I think he's fine. So that's that group of questions. Another longer question here. I know you've given your views before about on-court coaching, but on this subject, do you think Muguruza should have someone else doing the coaching on-court other than Sam Summick, her coach? Their relationship during matches seems quite toxic and doesn't seem to help the match situation at all. What do you think about this? Well, as I'm sure most of you know, I'm very much against on-court coaching. Don't think it should be a thing at all, either on the men's or women's tour. Watching Muguruza's on-court coaching sessions is no pleasure at all. She's often quite stroppy with Summick when he comes on to try and help her out, despite the fact she's called him on. But at the end of the day, whether it's annoying to watch or not, it's not really about the experience for the people watching. If Summick can put up with it and Muguruza wants to keep doing it, then fair enough. There was quite a dramatic incident on court with the two of them a few weeks ago, and I remember commenting afterwards that I wouldn't be surprised if, after all the drama surrounding it and people telling her to get rid of him and to split, I said I wouldn't be surprised if she actually came back and won a slam with him next year, because that would be typically Muguruza. If they've stuck together for this long, however much friction there seems to be in the relationship, something must be going right behind the scenes. I don't think you get rid of a coach because your on-court coaching sessions aren't going well. If things are going right off the court, then you're going to stick with it. Next question, two questions that were very similar. Who is your favourite tennis player? Brackets, current tennis player. Please don't give a dodgy answer. And who is your favourite male and female tennis player? And someone else said Roger or Rafa or Djokovic. Okay, I am a journalist and I am supposed to aim for objectivity as much as possible, which I do. And I'm sorry, but I have to tell you right now that I cannot reveal my favourite tennis players. I don't believe that you can work in tennis or watch tennis and enjoy the sport without having a preference in which style of tennis you watch and whose tennis you watch. I think if you like the sport, if you work in the sport, if you're surrounded by this, you're going to have certain game styles that you prefer to watch. It's natural. I think for anyone that works in the game and who loves the sport, it has to happen. I don't think the fans necessarily realize this, and therefore if I were to tell you the game styles that I prefer to watch, there could be a lot of people in the future who hear this calling bias when I say something about a player that they don't like. I believe that even though I have certain game styles that I prefer to watch, I can push all that aside when I'm watching a match and I can concentrate only on the tennis being produced and the story of the match. But yeah, there are going to be people sat there ready to call bias, so for that reason I'm sorry, but I can't disclose which game styles I most enjoy. What I can do is tell you who the players I first started following and watching a lot were. I started watching tennis properly that I remember when I was 10 or 11 years old. If you followed me for a while, you will know that I started to watch tennis because of Serena and Venus Williams. The way they dominated, I have always loved to see dominance in sport, and especially in tennis. A lot of people are cheering for the underdogs, they're wanting some change, they're wanting more variety. I've always admired and respected dominance. So Serena and Venus got me into following tennis, I would say. And then some people might know this as well, but the first male tennis player when I was younger that I took a particular liking to was Jo-Wilfried Tsonga. I just loved the explosive way he played, so energetic. Next questions, what inspired you to pursue a career in sports journalism, and also how did you start this career in tennis and how much do you like it? I love it, it's great. I think I answered a very similar question on my first Q&A, which was a year ago, but when I was 16 or 17 I didn't really know what I wanted to do as a career, and I loved writing and I loved tennis, so I thought I would try and combine the two things. So I started writing for various blogs and things online before I got my first paid job as a tennis journalist when I was 18. From there I was going to tournaments to report and write from there. I was working online on social media and different tennis websites, mainly in a writing capacity to begin with, but then I went to university as well and studied a degree in sports journalism, which I finished earlier this year. I mainly went to uni for more experience in the broadcast side of things because I was quite interested in that and had no previous experience, so it was while I was at uni that I started this YouTube channel, and I've been on the radio a lot since then and worked at bigger tennis tournaments and hopefully working towards more TV and radio type of thing. Next question, your favourite Grand Slam and why, and also rank the slams by your favourite to least favourite. This one tends to change a bit for me. My favourite would have to be a toss-up between the Australian Open and Wimbledon, probably the Australian Open at the moment. It's fresh, the players are coming in full of energy, they put on a really good show in Australia. You can tell just by watching it even on the TV, it's a great tournament. And then Wimbledon, I worked at Wimbledon for the first time this year. It's the first tennis tournament I ever watched. It's on grass courts, which is the best surface in my opinion. And there's so much history to it and it's so different, so I absolutely love Wimbledon as well. After those two, my next favourite would probably be the French Open because it's clay courts, so it's a bit different again. There seems to be a certain regal air at the French Open like there is at Wimbledon as well. It's really sad to me that Court Philippe Chatrier has been demolished and is being remade. I think you're losing a lot of history there and it's going to be quite different. It will be interesting for me to see how Nadal copes with the different atmosphere that's going to be there because he's dominated on that court for so long. And then US Open bottom, not because I hate the thing by any means. It's at the end of the year, a lot of the players are tired, and I did always think that if there were to be 4 Grand Slams, I always thought that one should be outdoor hard court, one should be grass courts, one should be clay court, and the other should be indoor hard. So I think that the US Open should be an indoor hard court tournament, but it's not. Which tennis player would you love to interview? I'm taking this as a one-on-one interview. I think a one-on-one interview with Djokovic would be quite interesting at the moment to get his thoughts on his resurgence and maybe also his treatment by the media over the years and the way he's been portrayed. Your favourite former tennis player, both ATP and WTA? Well, as I said, I started watching tennis properly about a decade ago, and with the longevity of tennis players right now, a lot of the players that were playing when I first started watching are still playing now. I did love watching Li Na on the WTA tour. I remember seeing her win the French Open in 2011. She had a great backhand. A female player that I wish I'd seen, because I was alive when she was competing, was Jennifer Capriati. The clips that I've seen of her, she's so talented. ATP, I wish I'd seen the Agassi Sampras era. I wish I'd seen way back with Ivan Lendl and Boris Becker. I wasn't really keen on Andy Roddick as a player, but I like him a lot as a pundit. He's great. Any tips on beating procrastination? You asked the wrong person. This really depends on why you're procrastinating. If I'm procrastinating and not getting on with my job and my work, what I will do to stop myself is I will go and look at all the people who are doing the kind of things that I should be doing, and that will spur me on to get back to it and do the best that I can and try and achieve my goals. Something tells me that strategy wouldn't be so effective if I needed to clean my bedroom or my bathroom and I went and looked at someone else's tidy bedroom and bathroom. Don't think that's going to spur me on. But if you're procrastinating from work and you are like me and quite a perfectionist and want to achieve and do well and be successful, go and check out everyone else who's working hard and achieving and being successful, and let that spur you on to do the same. I'm going to really miss Federer's one-handed backhand style of play when he decides to retire. Any other players with this style of play coming onto the scene? Question mark. Actually, yes. If we're talking about just one-handed backhands, there are quite a wave of one-handed backhands making their way onto the tour and doing well. Whether they are Federer-inspired or Wawrinka-inspired or Gasquet-inspired, they are on their way. Denis Shapovalov and Stefanos Tsitsipas stand out among the next-gen stars. How can Ostapenko and Kasatkina improve their serves? Practice. It is a simple answer, but practice is key. If a player is talented and can play, practice is key to them developing and to them finding what they need to improve in their game and making those tweaks and adjustments. For everyone, it's not that simple. You're never going to have a massive serve if you are a small player. Kasatkina isn't small, but she's 5'7", so she's not tall either, so she's never going to have the biggest serve. I think that's when you need to think more about variety and precision. Are you nailing those outside lines? Are you using the spin serve and the kick serve? It's really about picking the right serve to play. I think Ostapenko has a great serve when she's landing it. I don't know if this question is asking more about the technical aspect of the serve or the consistency with it. I think with Ostapenko it's definitely a case of not just hitting the ball as hard as she can whenever she gets the chance. I actually remember one time her coach saying to her, it doesn't matter if you're hitting a serve in really hard, if your opponent's not having any trouble with it and they're absorbing your power, that makes no difference. Even if you feel it's a good serve, if it's not doing damage, what's the point? Next question, how good can I get at tennis with training once per week with a coach? I'm 23 and I have never played tennis. No athletic talent to speak of, but I'm physically really fit. Well, the last bit is relative. I jog and have some muscle mass. I can relate. Look, this really depends on an individual person. How much talent, raw talent you have for the game, how quickly you pick things up. There are two big things I would say here. Don't be deluded. At 23, just starting the game, no experience in tennis, saying you're not particularly talented athletically, there's a 99.99999% chance that you're not going to be the next Roger Federer. But at the same time, and this is my second point, which is a bigger point, do not let people write you off and do not write yourself off because of your age. When you're older and you start something, you tend to pick it up more quickly. For example, I started tennis when I was 15, which is probably 10, 11 years older than most professional players are when they start the sport, and I had picked up the basics pretty quickly. If you have good hand-eye coordination, if you can pick things up quite quickly, if you are playing on a regular basis, if that's once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week, whatever, you can get somewhere. It's all about what you put into something. Sloane Stephens, I think, started playing tennis when she was 9, and she said something along the lines of, it's not about how old you are when you start, it's about how much time and how much dedication you give it, which is so true. If you want to do it, and enjoy it. Do you like football? Gotta be careful here. I enjoy playing it a heck of a lot more than I enjoy watching it. I would not choose to watch football. I was very into the 2014 World Cup. I've grown up in a family where football is very popular. My brothers love football, my dad loves football, so football is generally on during the week. I watched the World Cup, I watched the FA Cup final. What really bugs me about football is when players supposedly get injured. You've got football where people are always pretending to be injured, and you've got rugby where people are always pretending not to be injured. And I prefer rugby. Which player do you think will most dramatically improve in the next season, starting with Australia? When you say starting with Australia, it's very hard to say because some players come and play really well during the Australian swing, then you don't see much of them during the year, and it's quite hard for a player, I think, to start playing the year really well for the first time and then sustain that throughout the season. Alex de Minaur obviously did a very good job last year, and I'd seen him for the first time in the British summer of the year before, and he clearly had a lot of potential. I like to think I might have picked out another talent this year. There is a player from Japan that I have tweeted about a lot and written about a bit called Yosuke Watanuki, who is 20 years old, and I saw him at a challenger event in Loughborough earlier this year. I went to see his match. He was playing the top seed, didn't know anything about him, didn't know his age, his name, or anything. I was there because the top seed was playing, I had to take notes. Lucas Lacko was the top seed, and I started to realize that he wasn't losing just because he was playing badly, but because the guy he was playing, Watanuki, was actually playing brilliant tennis, and I followed him since then, and he is a great player. He has a lot of weapons to his game. He's very complete in terms of his repertoire. He's played a handful of ATP main draws this season, and I think that next year he definitely has the potential to go into the top 100 and to make a name for himself. Also, a teenager from Canada that I'm sure many people are aware of, Felix Auger-Aliassime. Not sure if I've pronounced that correctly, but I haven't heard his name that much. Great talent, great firepower, already making a move. Denis Shapovalov thinks a lot of him. And with the WTA, you know, it's more of an open field. I think it's a lot easier for players to make a breakthrough, and there are many players, even outside the top 200 at the moment, I think, who could make a wave next year. How are you planning to move this channel ahead? Would love to see more regular videos of some kind, even though I know you're working. Thank you very much. Yeah, after this video, I'm hoping to take a bit of time off to think about the channel and to work on some design elements of it and to think about what I want to do next year. I do want to somehow upload more regularly, and I do want to do more writing as well, because writing is why I first came to this area of journalism, and even though I'm more into broadcast now, I do love writing pieces, and I just haven't been writing as much lately, so I'm thinking about my website as well and what I can do there. So follow me on my social media and I'll keep you up to date with what's going on. Have you voted or will you vote for anyone in the 2019 Tennis Hall of Fame, and if so, would you mind seeing who and why? I haven't actually, and I won't be voting, but if I was, I would be voting probably for Li Na. Obviously I didn't watch some of the other players that are in the vote, and everyone has earned their right to be there, but everyone knows Li Na has done a tremendous amount for Asian tennis. Do you have any thoughts on the origins of verbal terms that are relatively unique to tennis, such as deuce, love, etc.? How did these phrases come about? Could talk for a while about this one. I'll put a link in the description explaining more about how these terms originated. Both deuce and love, I believe, come from French terms. Deuce comes from a French term which basically means the score is level. And then I think there's some dispute regarding love, but love supposedly comes from the French word for egg, and eggs are kind of a zero shape, I guess. Next question. Sabalenka, Osaka, and Ostapenko's power games look likely to be the future of women's tennis. Is there room for Kasatkina and Bencic to win slams, or will power players run riot? Interesting that you mentioned Belinda Bencic, because she is a player who's been off the radar a little bit this year, but was starting to look good again at the beginning of the year. This is a bit of a sidetrack, but she's had injuries, was top 10, has now dropped down. For some reason, players have had difficulty with her game. Remember, in 2015, she won that Premier title, beating 7 straight Grand Slam finalists. And I think Bencic is a player who could be making a move and climbing up the rankings in 2019. So that said, I do think there is room for the likes of Kasatkina and Bencic. Kasatkina obviously made the Indian Wells final this year, and I think there's more of a chance for counterpunchers and craft-oriented players like Kasatkina and Bencic to make a move on the women's tour than on the men's tour. I think there's more room for these players, especially when you look at the inconsistency of some of the power players. If they're moved around a bit, if they're thrown out of position, they can throw in more unforced errors and get frustrated quite easily. In your opinion, what players, male and female, are the most liked backstage by the other players, media and fans in general, and what players are not so well liked by the other players or the fans? I know some players who don't have great reputation among the other players, but I'm not going to go into that. Not ready for that controversy. I know that Roger Federer is very, very well liked by the majority of players on the ATP Tour, and obviously Serena Williams is looked up to by the WTA players. About on-court coaching, why is it allowed at the WTA events but not at slams? It should be a uniformity, allow it everywhere or ban it everywhere. What do you think? I think the same, but I would go even further and say just ban it everywhere, get rid of it. On-court coaching I don't think should be a part in tennis. If your player can't get through a match without some on-court pep talks, then I don't see how you think she can win a Grand Slam. As a general rule, the Williams sisters do not use on-court coaching, and they are the two players active on tour with the most Grand Slam titles, so I think that tells you something. To develop stronger muscles, you need to exercise your muscles. To develop a stronger mentality, you need to exercise your mentality. A teacher helps a student to prepare for the exam. They are not supposed to stand at their side and give them the answers as they take the exam. My belief is that a coach should be there to help the player prepare for the match, and then during the match they should sit back and let the player do it themselves. And cheer, of course. When will Serena retire? Who knows? This isn't something I often think about. As many people know, I feel very strongly about the fact we should not be rushing retirements, we should not be writing people off. Every time a top player has a big loss, we shouldn't be asking the question, oh no, is it all nearly over? If Serena wins a slam in 2019, I can definitely see her playing well into her 40s. But with all the changes that have happened in Serena's life, with getting married, with becoming a mother, so much has changed, I guess, in her outlook and in her perspective. She's always been hungry, she's always been driven, she's always been motivated, but at the same time she is a mother now, she is a wife now, she has other things in her life that she didn't have before. So I think she could keep playing well into her 40s. I think Venus could do the same. She's dealt with this autoimmune disease for so long now, but it really depends upon Serena's priorities. Will 24 Grand Slams be enough for her? Will 26 be enough for her? It really just depends on her hunger and her ability, but I think by reaching 2 Grand Slam finals, she's shown that she still has the level to be competing for the top titles. Should women's Grand Slams be best of 5 in order to get the same prize money as the men? Since women's matches are shorter, it makes less money than men in terms of ad time. That is true. I don't want to delve into a massive debate. The thing here is that I don't think women could play best of 5 sets and sustain their quality. So there probably are women on tour that could play several best of 5 set matches, but men and women are just built differently, and I don't think that women could play best of 5 sets and sustain the same quality that we're seeing on tour at the moment. Do you like the Asian swing? Yes, I do like the Asian swing. I think there are some great tournaments there. It builds up to the WTA Finals and ATP Finals at the end of the year. I know a lot of people feel like it's quite a pointless part of the season after the US Open. Some people take a break from watching it. Personally, I struggled with the time zones this year, so that was annoying, but I think it has its place in the season. There are players who've achieved their best results during that swing of the year and then gone on to improve their form and go higher in the next season. Should men play best of 3 sets at slams? Absolutely not. If anyone knows me, if anyone's watched my content, if anyone's read my articles, they know I feel especially strongly on this best of 5 sets for the win. It tests a player mentally and physically in a way that the best of 3 format simply doesn't. You get some of the most historic, most dramatic moments in tennis over best of 5 sets, and a lot of the top players agree, so best of 5 always. If tennis was a person, then died, which other sport would take its place as king of racket sports? I suppose in terms of popularity, maybe badminton, but I think that squash is a great sport that doesn't get the recognition it deserves. Squash should be an Olympic sport, definitely. The pretty game, brackets most French players, versus the winning game, brackets but not so flashy. I don't know if you can group game styles that simply, to be honest. There are always going to be more counterpunching style players who do better than others, and there's going to be more aggressive players or more boring players, I guess, that aren't as good. Really, if you care about winning and being successful, I guess there needs to be less focus on entertaining the crowd and pleasing the fans and more focus on just doing what you need to win. If you need to play junk tennis to knock off a top player, then do it. Do what you need to do to win. Morning lark or night owl? Night owl, definitely. I try to be a morning person so hard, but unless I'm on the radio or working, I cannot get up early in the morning. And then I always end up staying up really late into the early hours of the morning, usually because I'm working. I've been up editing a video for YouTube until 6:30 a.m, if not 7 a.m. before. So if you could tell your past self one thing you know now, what advice would you offer? I am grateful for my life and for every experience that I've had, and I think you learn from your mistakes, and therefore I wouldn't change anything. So that's the end of the Q&A. Thank you for your questions. Let me know what you thought of my answers and if you agree or disagree. I don't know when I'll be back, but follow me on social media so that you know what's going on, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!